Heterotrophic nutrition is a kind of nutrition that happens in different organisms who cannot prepare their own food like plants. In heterotrophic nutrition, the organisms depends upon another organisms for their food. So for example, we have saprophytic nutrition. In saprophytic nutrition, the saprophytes depends upon dead and decaying organic matter for their food. With example, bacteria and fungi. When we talk about parasitic nutrition, it's a type of nutrition where they also depend upon other organisms for the nutrition and they cannot prepare their food, but in this case they are acting as parasites. So that's why it is called as parasitic nutrition. Example, bacteria, most of the protozoas, all these are parasitic nutrition. Whereas the final one, which we can divide nutrition into, heterotrophic nutrition into holozoic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition is a complex type of nutrition where an organisms cannot prepare their food. Instead, they depend upon other organisms for the food and they take the solid food directly, or let's say the complex food is taken directly by the body with the help of membrane or with the help of a mouth, and then that kind of nutrition is called as holozoic nutrition. For example, human being and amoeba. So there are all those organisms from amoeba till human being can be considered as holozoic nutrition. So let's go in detail about holozoic nutrition. When we talk about holozoic nutrition, we should give an example of amoeba. Why amoeba undergoes holozoic nutrition? It has a finger-like projections called pseudopodia. It extends its pseudopodia towards the food, covers the food, and then forms food vacuoles. Inside the food vacuoles, hundreds of enzymes are released, and these enzymes digest the food into small substances, and then the digested food is absorbed by the body and distributed throughout the body, and then finally the undigested food is excreted with the help of membrane, and the whole process seems to be like eating an organism with the help of membraned open structures. So this is called as phagocytosis. So what is phagocytosis? The type of nutrition that we see in amoeba is known as phagocytosis, where they engulf the food with the help of pseudopodia into the food vacuole and digest the food. This is called as phagocytosis. So when we talk about the steps of amoeba nutrition, we can divide that into different steps. The first step can be considered as ingestion. Ingestion is a process where the amoeba extends its pseudopodia over the food and covers the food into the food vacuole. The second step can be considered as digestion. The food that is in the food vacuole is covered properly with the help of the membrane, and that release thousands of enzymes which will properly digest the food. That even the food can be the living organisms which will be killed and the nutrients are being removed. So that's what is a phagocytic nutrition. So here during the digestion process, the enzymes are helping the complex substance like protein, carbohydrate, fats, amino acids to break into simple substances. So this is known as digestion. And the next step is called as absorption. The food that is digested into the monomolecules or monomers like monosaccharides, disaccharides, or let's say lipids, proteins in the form of amino acids. All these are being absorbed by the body. After absorption, the next step is called as assimilation. Assimilation means distributing the food to the different parts of the body. So that happens after absorption of the food into the body, because the body has to distribute the food to all parts, and it is done by assimilation. The distribution of the food to different parts of the body is known as assimilation. Whereas the fourth and the final step, or let's say fifth and the final step, is known as excretion or egestion. The undigested food that is left over in the food vacuole is excreted out through the membrane with the help of simple diffusion, and that's known as excretion or egestion. So these are the few steps of heterotrophic nutrition in amoeba. So if we had to write, we have to draw the diagram and explain each step in one sentence. Next is holozoic nutrition in human being. Holozoic nutrition. Nutrition in human being can be divided into many steps. Firstly, we can divide the whole system into two parts. The first is digestive system and the second is digestive digestive glands. So digestive system starts from the mouth and ends with anus, which includes alimentary canal. So alimentary canal starts with the mouth. In the mouth there is a buccal cavity, empty space, in which there is a tongue and teeth surrounded along with salivary glands. So teeth, there are different teeth in the mouth, so it is called as heterodont. The type of dentition in human being is known as heterodont, and it has different types of teeth. For example, it has scissors, incisors, canine, premolar, molar. So incisors, scissors, canine, premolar, molar. So because there are different types of teeth arranged in the same, that's why it is called as heterodont. The type of dentition. So the teeth are present inside the socket, so it is called as thecodont. In human being, in his or her lifetime, twice the teeth comes up. One is let's say temporary teeth, and another is permanent teeth, or you can call deciduous teeth and the permanent teeth. That's why it's like we call milk teeth and permanent teeth. So these two types of teeth in the person's life it comes. That's why it can also be called as diphyodont. So we had different terminology for the teeth thing. Like we said, heterodont, thecodont, diphyodont, heterodont, thecodont, diphyodont. So teeth, there is a molecular formula, or let's say dental formula over here, and the dental formula is 2123 by 2123. So teeth help in masticating the food, breaking the food into small pieces, whereas tongue helps in mixing the food with the salivary enzymes. There are three types of glands in our mouth. One is on the just below the tongue, called as sublingual, and below the jaws called as submaxillary, and below the cheeks known as let's say parotoid. So parotoid glands are a pair of glands that are present below the cheeks, whereas sublingual glands are the one which are present just below the tongue, and submaxillary are those glands which are present below the jaws. So they help in secretion of different salivary enzymes. Among them, the most useful enzyme is salivary amylase, which helps in digestion of carbohydrates. So carbohydrate is digested in the mouth. Partially it breaks into disaccharides and oligosaccharides. So next to mouth, in the mouth the food is mixed thoroughly with the salivary enzymes, and it is known as bolus. The food is then passed into the sac-like structure called stomach through a tube called esophagus, or you can call as food pipe, by a movement of the circular and longitudinal muscles called as let's say peristalsis movement. The wave-like movement of the longitudinal and circular muscles in the esophagus is known as peristaltic movement, and the process of digesting or swallowing the food is called deglutition. So deglutition is a process of swallowing the food from mouth to the stomach by a movement called peristaltic movement. What is peristaltic movement? The contraction and expansion of the muscles of the esophagus leads to the movement of the food into the stomach, which is known as it is known as peristaltic movement. So the food enters into the stomach. Stomach can be divided into three regions. The upper region is called as fundus, and then the middle region is called as cardiac region or the body, and the last region is called as pyloric region. So there are two sphincters in the human body. One is pyloric region, that is present in the pyloric region of the lower part of the stomach, whereas one is esophageal sphincter, which is present above the stomach. So esophageal sphincter, through esophageal sphincter the food enters into the stomach, and in the stomach when we see there are different regions in the stomach, so we can divide the stomach layers into three layers. The outermost called as serosa, the middle layer called muscularis. Muscularis can be further divided into longitudinal and circular muscles, whereas innermost layer is called as submucosa, and the innermost